Statistics show that there are over 8 million Canadians who provide care to a chronically ill or disabled friend or loved one, and 65 million caregivers in the U.S. My next guest knows full well what it's like to be one of those caregivers. Peter Rosenberger has been his wife Gracie's caregiver since the day they married, journeying with her through 78 operations, 60 physicians, dozens of hospital visits, and healthcare costs topping $9 million. Because of Peter's years of experience in caregiving, he has become a leading voice in the area. With a weekly radio program for caregivers, he's become a public speaker, spokesperson, and author. His new book is Hope for the Caregiver, Encouraging Words to Strengthen Your Spirit. Welcome, Peter.
Thank you so much for having me. And thank you all for taking the time to talk about this issue that's affecting so many people.
It's an important issue. I mean, millions of people are walking through this journey that you've walked
through.
And
they walk through it with a lot of isolation. Yeah. Caregivers deal with isolation, and so taking community to them through this medium, through your show, is so important, because all of a sudden, the moment they heard the word caregiver, viewers are right now just kind of, oh, that's me, yeah. You know, or they may be taking care of somebody who's watching this show, and this is about them today. And so thank you all.
And I want to encourage you at home that if at any point during this interview you feel led to call our prayer lines and ask for prayer through this journey, please do feel free to do so. You'll see the number at the bottom of your screen. Again, it's 1-866-273-4444. Now, Peter, tell me about Gracie. You met Gracie and fell in love with her.
Well, she stalked me. No, she didn't. She had already had a wreck by the time I met her. She had had about 20 operations. She had come back to college. I had transferred in, excuse me, from another school, and friends of ours said, you guys got to meet. And the moment I met this girl, I mean, this is not real spiritual, but she was a babe, you know. And I saw that she limped, and she had some scars, and her right foot was kind of turned in a little bit, and her left one was kind of misshapen, but she had just so perky and just full of life and energy, and her courage, her beauty. And then I heard her sing, and I thought, oh my goodness, I'm taking care of this woman for the rest of her life. I had no idea what that meant, and I had no idea how well I would succeed and how epically I would fail. I just was armed with a little bit of smarts and a goofy sense of humor and a lot of love for this woman, who was an extraordinary woman. And I jumped into this thing. Yeah. Taking care of somebody who suffers is a real challenge. And so that's how we started, and then the surgery count just started escalating.
Well, you tell the story of sitting in the hospital and looking through her files and just realizing, wow,
this is a big deal.
I've entered into a big thing.
Well, and I didn't know that until about 3 years into our marriage, just how big it was, because I'd never read her chart. I didn't know anything like that. I didn't think you were even supposed to read the chart, you know. That's off limits, top secret stuff. But after a seizure one night, in the middle of the night, about 3 in the morning, and she was throwing up everywhere. It took 3 nurses and myself to hold her down. I thought, what's going on here? And I went out and I saw her chart. This is back before they were electronic charts. And it was volume 4 of 4, and I just started pouring through it and reading it. And I was smart enough to understand and educated enough by that point to understand the nature of it, and I realized this is devastation. And this is not going to get better, and it hasn't. I mean, it's progressively gotten worse. She gave up both of her legs, one after each child. She's had just so many things going on. I mean, the surgery count that I can count is what you read off. There's so many procedures and stuff that are going on, and she lives with so much pain. Real pain. I've seen the MRIs and the x-rays. I mean, it was a devastating wreck that she had. Now here we are 3 decades later, and it's quite a journey. But I will say this, Maggie, we caregivers, particularly those, I just want to speak to spouses right now. Gracie and I don't deal with anything in our marriage as far as the principle of it that other spouses don't. We just deal with it on a nuclear level. I mean, it's just coming at us all the time. We still have to learn to die to yourself, put somebody else's interest in front of you, and all that kind of stuff. But the principle is the same all the way around for everybody. I've learned a few things about life, about love, about healthcare, about God, and I'm on a mission to help strengthen my fellow caregivers.
And that's why you wrote this book. You say that you wish you had some of these.
Well, somebody said, what would you say to your younger self?
Yeah.
That's what I would say to my younger self, and it's not hope for the caregivers. It's not hearts and rainbows and unicorns and so forth. It's the conviction that we as caregivers can live a calmer, healthier, and dare I say it, an even more joyful life, even while dealing with this sort of stuff. We're never promised a life without pain and suffering.
Yeah.
It's just a matter of degrees.
Yeah.
And yet in that pain and suffering we have, Scripture speaks clearly that we can have peace in this thing, that we can have joy in this thing, even while we're dealing with horrific things. Jesus counted it all joy just to go to the cross. For the glory set before him, he endured this. Paul realized this is nothing to be compared to what's. I had a reporter ask me a question the other day, and it was a really interesting question, Maggie. And they said, knowing the future for you and Gracie, how do you keep joy? And I said, because I know the future. This is short term. However long, it's a lifetime, yes, but it's short term. Look at what he saved us from. Yeah. He saved us from something far worse than amputations, far worse than from Parkinson's, Alzheimer's, and chronic pain and so forth. And yeah, this is really painful what we deal with. But he says, my grace is sufficient for you. And then that's my wife's verse, 2 Corinthians 12:9, or as Donald Trump would say, 2 Corinthians. It's going to be huge. But mine is in Galatians where he said, I have been crucified with Christ. I no longer live. The life I live in this body as a caregiver, I live by faith in the Son of God. Now, I don't do it perfectly, but and my wife would testify. We'd have a witness right here. By the way, don't adjust y'all's set. This is exactly how I talk. So, but this is what we do. We put our scared hand into his scarred hands, and this is how we do it.
In those times where you were scared, and maybe in the darkest hours, did you ever feel like giving up?
Oh, regularly. It's those late night conversations with the ceiling fan, I call it. And you're thinking, but what does giving up look like? How do you give up? How do you walk away from something like this? And unfortunately, a lot of men do, and they leave when they have a disabled child in the family and so forth. That's one reason I'm so proud of my brother, who has a 27-year-old daughter with cerebral palsy, and he's just such a model for that. And where would I go? And this is the woman I love. These are my children. This is my responsibility. But how do you do this? Yeah. Dear God, what do I do? And so, there's regular stuff like that where you're just conflicted. And I think this is what caregivers struggle with. We are conflicted daily. I mean, whether it's not just one emotion we're dealing with. You're rageful, you're resentful, you're hopeful, you're in love, you're compassionate, you're frustrated, you're weary, you're depressed. Name it. It's all there, and it just comes at you like a tsunami. The problem for caregivers is not really the medical stuff, which is a big problem, but that has its own set of skills that you use. Yeah. The problem for caregivers is the emotional triage that comes when you're trying to take care of somebody who may be acting in a hurtful way. Somebody that you love very much. Do you know how frustrating it is to be in love with someone you want to choke, or vice versa? They want to be in love with you and want to choke you too. And this is what's going on. And into this, I want to be able to speak some things I've learned. My opinion is irrelevant. Yeah. Nobody cares about my opinion, Maggie. My experience, however, is very relevant. And 30 years of experience is going to help these folks navigate through these landmines.
I'm going to be honest with you. When I first started reading this book, I thought, it's kind of selfish, to be honest. I kind of felt that way, and I thought, because I know one day I will enter into this world of caregiving, but I felt like, well, shouldn't you just, want to take care of her? And you do, but I kind of felt like, why are you talking about advocating for the caregiver when this person is, doesn't have legs, or, they're going through this struggle? And as I read this book, I realized how important it is for the person you're taking care of to take care of yourself.
These are the legs my wife depends upon.
Yeah.
I have a responsibility to be a good steward of these legs and this body and my job and my mind and my heart and my spirit. I have a responsibility because she depends on those things. Yeah. She is not going to be helped if I go down physically, emotionally, financially, all of those things. And so it's counterintuitive. Yeah. And I call it the Delta Doctrine. By the way, I was flying out of Delta out of Atlanta, everything leaves through Atlanta, Delta. And they said, put your mask on first before helping a loved one. Well, that's it. They remind us to do. Is that selfish? No, they realize that you can't hold your breath long enough to help somebody. Neither can caregivers. But what does that look like? And I give away a free chapter of that at my website of the Delta Doctrine. Just get it, read it at caregiverswithhope.com, because that's the core thing of learning how to change the way we think about this. I'm in this for the long haul. This has been going on for Gracie and I for I mean, she's been hurt for 33 years. We've been married for now 30 years this year. This could go on a lot longer. I'm not much good to her if I'm a husk of a person. So I have a responsibility for good stewardship of this body, of this mind, of this heart, of this wallet,
Yeah.
and everything.
Let's talk about some of those tips. You talk about wait, water, walk.
Wait, water, walk. That's the first steps of the Delta Doctrine. Wait. Most of caregivers' issues come at flashpoints of emotional craziness. If they're having a seizure or they're going into a respiratory arrest or something, that's a medical triage situation. You don't want to talk about the relationship while somebody's bleeding out. Right. You want to stop the bleeding. Where caregiver struggles, the emotional dynamic that goes on, not just with your loved one, but with family members who may criticize you for how you're taking care of them, or the church who may say, well, if you had enough faith, God would.
Yeah.
Don't say that.
Yeah.
And the wait is what I'm trying to get caregivers to do. You don't have to go to every fight you get a ticket to. You could wait a couple of those things out. I've never in my life, Maggie, not one time gotten in trouble for something I didn't say. And so just don't, bite your tongue and learn to like the taste of blood. Yeah. Just don't go there. You don't have to do it. And water, drink to think. Just cool off a little bit. Fill your mouth up with something besides words. You don't have to speak. Just let it go. And then walk. Take a few moments to just bleed off the stress. If it gets really bad, just take a 5-minute walk. Cool off a little bit. Let your body just air out. And you come back to it and you stay fresh and tanked up, because you are no good if you get into these real arguments and everything else. You're not going to win these things. A tug of war is like that. If you win the tug of war, you end up on your face. If you lose it, you end up on your rear. Don't pick up the rope. Just leave it alone. Wait, water, walk.
This is good. You know what? Our time is up, Peter.
Can
you believe that? We have
yes,
so much more. Maybe we'll bring you back.
Well, I would love to. I would love to. But you have to use subtitles for a lot of people to watch because I can't help it.
Again, the name of the book is Hope for the Caregiver, Encouraging Words to Strengthen Your Spirit by Peter Rosenberger. Thank you again, Peter.
Thank you so much, Maggie, for having me.